Our interventions to foster a sustainable Earth so far have not been very effective. We know, as one example, that the climate is changing. We know the general trajectory, and we have known it since the 1970s. The only thing that is changing is the amount of detail about the possible outcome. But we haven't managed to stop moving along this trajectory. Many of our interventions are treating symptoms, not causes. Interventions are often technical adjustments rather than systemic changes. They are reinforcing or at least accepting the systems rather than changing them. This sustainability gap is ever increasing because we focus on short-term pragmatism instead of focusing on the root causes of our sustainability problems. Leverage points are places to intervene in a system where minor interventions can lead to relatively major changes.
A leverage point is a place within a system where small changes can have large effects. The lower we go in the iceberg, the more leverage we have for transforming the system. For example, changing structures and influencing mental models has a broader, more far-reaching effect than reacting in the moment and firefighting discrete events. Thus, the only real way to find high leverage points is to first find the root causes.
Donella Meadows, one of the authors of The Limits to Growth, back in 1972, identified a hierarchy of increasingly effective leverage points on a scale from 1 to 12. Existing sustainability interventions such as green taxes, biodiversity conventions, or the greening of the CAP reform, etc., appear to be failing to shift the current unsustainable development trajectories. Yet, such minor reforms are relatively easy to do and relatively easy to engage with for us as researchers. That's why they are preferred by politicians and by researchers. The outcome might be more straightforward, the questions easier to ask, the methods already available. But interventions at deep leverage points, which may actually bring about transformational change, are much, much harder to understand or carry out. The goals of the system or systematic structures and how to change them is more difficult to tackle. Colleagues of mine classified the leverage points by Meadows into 4 domains: parameters, feedbacks, design, and intent. Design and intent of the system being the deeper leverage points that could foster a more transformative change.
Systems change requires affecting the organization at high leverage points to resolve root causes. This approach is required on difficult problems, since problem solvers can exert only limited amounts of force on a large system. If that force is applied at low instead of high leverage points, it will be overcome by the forces of the innate dynamics of the system that arise from the root causes. It is possible that events can change behavior, which changes elements, which change relations, function, and models, but it is not often. 1 billion events may pass without altering the system much. In contrast, if you go the other direction and change the paradigm and function of the system, you will almost certainly get major changes. A paradigm shift is when things move on that level, but of course, those things happen very rarely. For example, the last time Western society had a major cultural paradigm shift was approximately 500 years ago as we entered the modern era. This really did change almost every aspect of these societies. It created a new body of knowledge with the scientific revolution, a new system of political organization with the Enlightenment, French Revolution, and the rise of the modern republic nation-state, a new technology base with the Industrial Revolution, a new economic organizational paradigm with capitalism, a new way of structuring organizations with the bureaucracy. All of that followed naturally from a shift in the underlying cultural paradigm from one grounded in the spirituality of the Middle Ages to a materialistic scientific paradigm of the modern era. Leverage points are an abstraction. You have to remove the successive layers of detail before you will get to the fundamentals where the leverage really is. For example, if we were to take a political system and look for the leverage point, we would likely look to the top of the hierarchy, thinking that if we could just change what the leader is doing, then this would affect everyone else. But of course, the leader is just an actor in the system who is responding to events. A politician with 4 years in office will spend most of their time putting out fires and catering to the interest of those who voted for them so as to get reelected. Where this analysis fails is that it looks for the leverage points all on one level, the event level. Looking for leverage points on the event level will lead you astray. Real systems change comes from a change in quality. The high leverage points are really in the qualitative factors of the system. They are the things that are not being measured or accounted for, and thus they go largely unnoticed. A reductionist analytical approach has led our cultures to place an overemphasis on quantity and numbers, has given us the idea that what we can measure is more important than what we can't measure. In a system's normal state of operations, it may well be that quantity matters most because it is in a linear regime. But it is quality that creates change. Non-linear change is a qualitative change. It is the one person who acts qualitatively differently by standing up and saying, "No, I will not take a bribe." If you look at major changes, like the fall of the British Empire in India, that was accelerated by a person that acted qualitatively differently to the way most people do.